Welcome, everyone. This is SehoPod. This is actually take 3 because I'm quite rusty at doing this. I think the last time I did this was about a month ago. Since then, I've been busy with all sorts of things, still at Boston College, doing school. But we're back for episode 14. I'm here with guest number 14.
Audrey Smallwood.
Thanks for being here, Audrey.
Thank you for having me.
Again, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic.
Fantastic. And you said you were very much looking forward to being here.
Yes,
And that is because
I love listening to podcasts myself.
Mm-hmm.
I actually love watching podcasts. So I like that you have this visual element.
Nice.
Because when I listen to a podcast, I always go on YouTube and see if they have like a visual element. Because I like watching them talk.
Yeah.
So I love this.
Nice.
And I love having conversations with you.
Thank you.
So
I like having conversations with you as well.
Thank you.
Awesome. How are you here at Boston College?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, the ultimate answer is God. Because I honestly couldn't tell you what led me to apply here other than like God's intervention. I'm originally from California, for the viewers. And
we're in California.
I'm from Turlock, California. It's like a smaller, more rural town in like California's Central Valley, so like kind of like dead center of California. Huge like agricultural hub. So I'm from Turlock, California, and I was 100% set on going to like a California school. I applied to like 12 schools in state. Really did not think about out-of-state schools at all, just because I love California. I love my family. At the time, I was in a long-term relationship with someone who was going to stay in California. And so I was kind of like, my family, my friends, my boyfriend's here. Like, why should I leave? And then I kind of had this moment like in January of my senior year. And I was like, wait, crap, I don't want to go to any of these schools.
You didn't apply anywhere early decision?
No.
Oh, dang.
No. It's actually, like, my high school, college was a lot different than I think what most people at BC, like, their high school perceptions of college were.
Sure.
A lot of people from my hometown, from my high school, the majority of them go to junior college, like the local junior college. Yeah. Or they enter the workforce immediately, or a lot of them have family farms. So they'll start working for their parents and running their farm.
Yeah.
Or they'll go to like a UC or a state school.
Yeah.
And there's like a handful of people that don't do those options and like go out of state, but like I could count the number of people that went out of state on 2 hands.
Dang.
And my
how many people?
There were like 650 people in my class. And so it was a pretty big high school. And so like we weren't really educated on like this is the college application process. It was like, here's how you apply to UCs. Here's how you fill out the Modesto Junior College application.
Got it.
And luckily, I was fortunate enough to have like an outside college counselor.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't even know that like that was a thing people did.
Mm.
The only reason I knew that is because my cousins who lived outside of Turlock in the Bay Area were like, hey, this is normally what people do. You should do this.
Yeah.
So I got a college counselor and learned about things like early action, early decision.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have like a dream school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't do early decision anywhere. But yeah, back to January of senior year. I had a crisis moment. And I was like...
So at this point, did you have the college counselor?
Yes, I did. I'd applied to like 12 schools, like I said. And I had done early action to a lot of them. And they were schools that, like, I kind of knew I was going to get into.
Okay.
I wasn't super drawn to them.
Yeah.
And, you know, as I started getting the decisions back, I was kind of like, I don't even see myself at any of these schools. Like, I'm not passionate about going into these places. So, like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And so that's when I kind of sat down with the same cousin I was talking about earlier, who's from the Bay. And her and the rest of my family were like, Audrey, like, you should apply to more schools, but more specifically, you should check out BC. And I was like, oh, like, what's BC? I didn't even know what BC was.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's this amazing school outside of Boston. Like, it's exactly, like, if I know what your criteria are for a school, and it's exactly what you want. And so I was like, that sounds amazing. And originally, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to apply to 5 more schools. Okay. But I ended up applying only to BC and doing early decision 2.
You did too, got it. Yeah.
Which is so unlike me because at this time in my life, I was such, like, a calculated, like, person. I had been, like, planning out what colleges I was going to apply to for, like, a year and a half. Like, doing my, like, so prepared. So, like, I'm staying in California. Like, I know what my life is going to look like.
Yeah.
And so this was, like, a moment where, like, I literally completely, like, did something that was so unlike me.
All the other schools were California schools?
Yes.
Dang.
And that's why I say it was God, because this was, like, so, like, not the normal Audrey.
Yeah.
Like, just not something I would normally do.
Huh.
I didn't even tell my college counselor about it. Like, I told her afterwards. I was like, oh, by the way, I, like, ED2'd to BC.
Yeah.
And she was like, what? But I'd never been to Massachusetts, never been to Boston. Barely knew what BC was. And I kind of just trusted my family who, like, had seen BC. My cousin was going to ED there, ended up deciding not to. They knew people that went there. And I kind of just trusted them and trusted God. And I was like, if I get in, then I'm going. If I don't, then I'll figure it out. And I ended up getting in, ended up visiting, like, the weekend that, like, you had to, like, officially accept your ED agreement. And luckily I loved it. And I was like, okay, well, this is where I'm going.
That's awesome.
That's the long story.
So, like, how much uncertainty did you have, or was it just, like, an immediate, like, oh, like, maybe it doesn't make sense, but it just makes sense that I'm going to try this and then figure it out?
I can't even remember, like, I don't remember being stressed about it. I remember being kind of, like, shocked at myself that I did it.
Yeah.
Just because, like I said, like, that's not me. Like, that's not normally what I do. But I was at the point where, like, BC was the first school that I was drawn to. And it was important to me that I went to a school like BC.
Yeah.
And my college counselor she was not very encouraging. She was very much like, you're not getting in anywhere. Same with my high school counselor. Like, my high school counselor literally told
Wait, but I mean, I'm assuming you had good grades, like, you took challenging classes, right?
Yeah, but, like, it's her job to, like, make you realistic. And so, like, I did not think I was going to get into BC. And I was like, if I do, then, like, that's where I'm going. Like, I probably won't. But, like, it was kind of just like we're going to see what happens sort of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When did you feel like, since you got here, like, you knew, like, this is where I'm supposed to be?
Wow. This is such, like, a classic, like, you ask a BC student this, and this is what they're going to say. But, like, meeting the people here. Because, like I said, like, I think in high school, it was a struggle for me in the sense that I wasn't surrounded by people who, like, had a heart for service, had a heart for, you know, just like accomplishing and like being an ambitious person
Yeah.
and like caring about school, caring about your career, caring about all those sort of things. And so when I came here, it was kind of like a breath of fresh air because that's like everyone here.
Yeah.
And so like everyone was so similarly minded to me.
Yeah.
And that was something I had never experienced before. And so being in that kind of environment and like meeting people who like thought and acted in the same way as me, I was like, this is exactly like what I wanted in this school.
Yeah.
And like that was something I gauged like within the first week.
Yeah.
The people here are awesome. And I mean, that was like a huge thing for me. Like these are the people I'm going to be surrounded with for 4 years.
Yeah. And,
you know, I was meeting really amazing people.
Who were those amazing people?
Well, I actually like, I was really lucky in the fact that I met my like best friends literally the first night of college. So I did orientation 7.
Yeah.
Which is the last orientation. And my roommate, Eva, her and I like met over Instagram. Like, you know, you DM like a million people. For some reason, I chose her. And I didn't, like, we had FaceTimed, like, I think once. And I, like, knew, I was like, okay, we're just going to see how it goes. We, like, ended up really hitting it off. Like, she's my best friend. Like, we are so compatible, live great together. But her and I were, like, you know, kind of, like, socializing together during those, like, first few weeks. And on the first night, we lived in Fitz on Upper. And the, like, CLXF fire alarm went off. And so we went outside and, like, everybody was outside or whatever. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity to socialize, Eva. And I was like, let's go talk to that girl right there. And I just picked a random girl out of this crowd of people. Yeah. And it happened to be Brielle, who's one of my best friends, one of my roommates today. And she ended up inviting us back to her room where we met her roommate, whose name is Audrey. Very confusing. Who's also one of my best friends. And so the 4 of us met that first night. And we've been inseparable since. And so I think, like, meeting people and getting so close to them and, like, having this immediate connection is something that I'm so grateful for. Because I immediately had, like, this support system going into, like, your first semester of college, which I think is really vital in succeeding and, like, you know, just being okay.
That's awesome. Like, it's just, you can't even think about, like, what would have happened if you didn't meet them, because, like, you did meet them and it just worked out, and, like, here you are and you're still close with them.
Yeah.
That's a blessing. Like, such a blessing. Seriously.
Yeah. It's such a blessing. And, like, I also have to mention Chi Alpha as well.
What is Chi Alpha?
Chi Alpha is a Christian organization here at BC that both of us are a part of. And faith is really important to me. Coming into BC, it was something that I prioritized, finding, like, a faith group on campus that I was connected with. Like, that's something that I prioritized finding, like, right off the bat. Yeah. And there's a bunch to choose from here at BC, and I tried a lot of them, but one of the first ones I tried was Chi Alpha. And I remember the first thing I went to with them was like a life group. It was on St. Mary's Lawn.
What's life group?
Life group is like, it's like a Bible study with, like, my life group had like 8 girls in it. Yeah. And we basically just sit with a Chi Alpha staff member.
Or a student leader.
Or a student leader, like Seho. And we talk about God and the Bible and just are in community with one another. And so my life group leader at the time, her name's Jenna, held a life group, and there were, I believe, 5 of us girls there. And we all met, we all hit it off, and we kept coming back to that life group every Monday night. And those girls are like still my best friends. And so that as well was super important to me and such a blessing, because finding like-minded people who are also followers of God and who prioritize faith in their everyday life was something that was necessary for me to, be at peace knowing that BC was the right place for me.
Yeah.
And so meeting those girls, I think it was like within the first month of school, was a really like crucial moment. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. We'll go back to faith, but I want to skip back because you had talked about family being influential to you being here and just talked about family in general. And I know from hearing your story that like just the significant role that family plays in your life. What was family like for you growing up, and how is it now in terms of your immediate family? But also, I know how close you are with your extended family, your cousins as well. So
Yeah. So I am the youngest of 5 kids. There's 3 girls, 2 boys. All 4 of my siblings are in their 30s.
And you're...
And I'm 19 years old. And so there's a huge age gap. And so growing up, I was basically an only child. I lived with one of my siblings for like a couple years before they went to college.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, I consider myself an only child growing up, like, in the house.
Yeah.
My dad passed away when I was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up being raised by a single mom who worked a lot and who's the best mom ever. But growing up, it was a lot of like me and her at home or me with her at work. And my siblings kind of acted as like second parents in a way. So they would like babysit me sometimes, watch after me, give me an escape from being at work with my mom. So yeah, like it's weird because my siblings I kind of see as more like parental figures because of how they stepped in, especially in place of like me not having my dad there. So I'd say like growing up in terms of like who I played with, it was more my cousins. I have a lot of cousins. I have a huge family. Mostly on my mom's side is who I'm really close with. We're a big Mexican family, and my cousins, I have a lot of cousins that are like the same age as me. They call us the 3 amigos. So there's me, my cousin Izzy, who is the one that convinced me to come to BC. She's also 19 years old. And then my cousin Noah, who's also 19 years old. So the 3 of us, like, were inseparable growing up. My whole family lives in California, and most of us live in Turlock, with the exception of, like, a couple people that live, like, a couple hours away. But we see each other, like, regularly. Growing up, we would see each other, like, at least once a month. And so my cousins, especially Izzy and Noah, were, like, pretty much my siblings growing up. They are, like, who I had that, like, sibling dynamic with. And then my actual siblings were more of, like, parental figures is kind of, like, how I see them. And so I think it's a very, like, unconventional dynamic. I wouldn't change it. It's just how I grew up. And I love my siblings, my cousins to death. But yeah, I'd say it was pretty unconventional.
That makes sense. That makes more sense now. I just didn't think of it how like your siblings are way older and they're more like parental figures.
Yeah.
So your cousins were like your siblings more almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
How far do you live from them?
From my siblings or my cousins?
Cousins.
Cousins. So, well, my siblings, we all live within like a 1 mile radius,
Okay.
other than my brother, who's like the closest in age to
Yeah.
me, and he lives in San Diego, which is like.
So all the siblings are still in like around Toronto?
Yeah, other than my brother Robbie, who lives in San Diego.
Got it.
But yeah, we all live within a 1 mile radius of each other, as well as most of my cousins and like my abuelita. Most of my family like lives within like literally a 1 mile radius. And then Izzy's family, like I said earlier, lives in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Which is like an hour and a half away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of my mom's sisters lives an hour away in Twain Harte. But other than that, everyone lives in Turlock. And that's largely due to our family businesses.
Mm. So what are your siblings up to right now?
So, let's see. The one closest in age to me, Robbie, he owns an HVAC company. He's awesome. Like, talk about, like, literally built his business from the ground up. Like, doesn't have a college degree. Did a million jobs when he moved out to San Diego, like, right out of college. And he started working for an HVAC company and realized that he could treat customers better and also make more money doing it. And so he started his own and now is like extremely successful and just like running his own business. So super proud of him. He's also never coming back to Turlock. He's living it up in San Diego, and I'll probably be joining him one day. My brother Jordan and my oldest sister Britton, they both run one of our family restaurants. That's my family's business. We're all restaurateurs.
How many restaurants?
So, gosh, I don't even know the exact amount. It's confusing because we have a lot that are under our name, but we've sold them. But I think like in total we probably have 20.
And then how many have been sold?
And then we still run. Like, my immediate family still runs one restaurant.
Okay.
My abuelita runs one restaurant.
Okay.
And then my aunt Mary. So there's like, this is so confusing. There's La Morenita, which is my abuelita's original restaurant that she started.
That's the OG?
The OG.
She's the one who started it.
She's the one who started it. La Morenita, we have, I don't know the exact amount. I think there's like 5 La Morenitas in California.
Okay.
She still like owns and completely runs one of them.
Okay.
Along with one of my uncles.
Okay.
Okay. Then there's my immediate family. So like my mom and my siblings started La Mo.
Okay.
And that's what we run.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have a La Morenita, but we sold it.
Okay.
Right now, we currently own one restaurant. It's called La Mo. And there's one of my aunts, my mom's sister. She started her own Mexican restaurant chain called El Jardín. And she sold all of them, but she still owns parts of each of them.
Got it.
And I think she has like anywhere from 5 to 10. I don't really know. But they're all in California. But my immediate family owns La Mo, and that's like where I grew up, where I was raised. And that's where 2 of my siblings and my mom, that's the restaurant they run. They're there every day. And then my oldest sister, Hillary, she was a nurse, did some time, helped us start La Mo. She's raising her kids right now, and I think she's planning on going back into the nursing field. So that's kind of like where everyone's at.
Crazy family business, Lord. I didn't know it was like that extensive.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just know restaurants maybe, but I didn't know it was like that elaborate.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Pretty elaborate.
What have you learned from being a restaurateur yourself in terms of, I guess, ways you've grown and learned about yourself in the workplace, but also ways it's been challenging?
Yeah. I always say that the restaurant raised me. Like, it was my home. Like, I don't even call it my second home.
Yeah.
Especially since when I did go home, like, it was just me and my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And we really did not spend much time at home. Like, if I wasn't at school, I was at the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when I was, like, growing up in elementary school, Lamo had dinner hours.
Okay.
And so, like, after school, I was there all day. On the weekends, I was there all day. And so it really formed, like, who I was. I wrote my college essay about the restaurant. And I think, like, the main things it taught me was, like, how important the restaurant was to my mom and really to my whole family. It really showed me that for them, like, their vocation was taken seriously. Like, it was so intertwined with, like, their mission as followers of God, as Christians. To them, it was like they were serving. They were truly serving.
Yeah.
And, like, I had the privilege of witnessing that every day because, like, most kids don't go to work with their parents.
Yeah.
Like, they're just there when they get home.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, like, I was either being forced to put an apron on and, like, show people to their table or bring them, like, a glass of water or, like, sweep or fold napkins or, like, do whatever or clean the windows. I enjoyed doing it sometimes. It wasn't child labor, but I was either, like, working alongside them or sitting at a table watching them serve people the whole day. And, like, that obviously has an immense effect on how you see work. And so I think from a young age, I was taught to view work, and especially our line of work, as an opportunity for hospitality and for service and for showing others, like, God's love. And I think, like, from the outside, that can seem like a very, like, serious lesson to learn from a restaurant.
Yeah.
But Lamo is a really special place. And my mom really incorporated so many little avenues in which she was able to disciple to others. So many of, like, our coworkers, like, growing up, obviously it's a restaurant, so people don't really stay there long term.
Yeah.
So there's so many, like, workers I remember, each of their lives she was so invested in. Like, these high school boys whose parents were on the streets, and, like, she really acted as, like, a mother figure to them.
Yeah.
Being like, hey, like, you probably shouldn't be doing that. Or, hey, like, what's that you're smoking? Like, I smell something on you. Like, she was a huge influence in the lives of so many people, not just of, like, our staff, but our customers. And she also, like, we have this thing at our coffee shop where...
Coffee shop?
Yes. So Lamo, we have, it's kind of like two entities, but they're connected.
Okay.
So there's the restaurant, and then we have a coffee shop. They're in the same location, and they're connected to one another.
Sure.
Except they have different hours.
Okay.
But they're all Lamo.
Okay.
It's kind of confusing.
Got it.
At our coffee shop, we used to have this thing where, like, a homeless person could come in and get a cup of coffee and just, like, pay what they wanted for it.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, like, I, like, because I was there all the time, like, I, like, became friends with the homeless people.
Mm.
And it was just, like, a normal thing. Like,
yeah.
I was, like, kind of trained to, like, when my friends would see a homeless person walking, they would, like, get scared and be like, oh, they're just like us. They're a normal person.
Yeah.
So, like, there's all these, like, lessons that I was taught through the actions of my mother and how she really used the restaurant as a way to, like I said, serve others. And because I was there all the time, like, I really was, like, immersed in that.
Yeah. That's an incredible story. And I'm sure there's, like, so much that you've learned even that you can't even, like, it seems like it's very much who you are and, like who you were growing up, and that's how it formed even so naturally, like you said, that was your home. So that's really, really cool and a very unique experience. That's awesome. Talk about KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, but Kitchens for Change, which is, is connected to obviously your experience in the restaurant. Yeah, would you mind explaining what Kitchens for Change is?
Yes. So Kitchens for Change is a nonprofit that I co-founded when I was a junior in high school. Our mission is to tackle food insecurity within Turlock through the use of restaurants' kitchens after hours.
Yeah.
We get high school students in the kitchen working alongside local chefs and cooking food for people in our community that need it.
Yeah. That's awesome. And how did the idea sprout?
So back the summer before my junior year of high school, this was kind of like the COVID pandemic was still going on. My community had taken a pretty bad hit in terms of, businesses shutting down, restaurants going out of business. Homelessness was a huge issue in Turlock. And, I was really witnessing all of it. And so was one of my peers. His name's Elias Rabine. He was a year older than me. And his family was also in the restaurant business. His family actually had a restaurant like 2 blocks down from us on the same street.
Yeah.
And so our families kind of like grew up together, like we're just friends in the restaurant industry. And so because of this like common experience we had, he came to me and he was like, listen, like, let's do something involving our restaurants to serve our community like during this time.
Yeah.
And so we kind of put our brains together alongside his mom, who was like played a crucial like founding role in KFC, and like other students along the way. And we founded this club on our high school campus, and we didn't really know like what it would become, but we kind of just kept rolling the ball, like seeing what worked.
Yeah.
And quickly realized that in like fundraising, like people really loved this idea and were really on board with helping us execute it. And so because of all the community support we were able to receive, and the kitchens we had readily available through both of our restaurants, and the chefs we also had readily available, and the students who were ready and willing to like jump on board with our mission, like we really kicked off and started doing like really amazing things for our community. And yeah, like that's kind of where it all started. And today it looks a lot different. But it just started as like this small idea for a club. And it kind of kept growing and growing.
Yeah. How does it look different now?
So we're now like a nonprofit organization. We have 2 chapters in Turlock at 2 different high schools. And we have a lot bigger dreams than I think we'd ever imagine we would.
Yeah.
The ultimate goal is for Kitchens for Change to be a nationwide organization located at high schools all over the nation, potentially colleges. We're still working out what we want it to become. But I think we've realized the opportunity we have with our resources, with the passion that people have for this kind of work, for this to become something much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I am confident that it will, and I hope and pray that it will. And, you know, we're kind of just seeing where our passion and how putting our minds together to figure out how it can become something bigger, where that will all take us.
Yeah. How does KFC, like, how will it continue to play a role in your future in terms of you, like, I know you've expressed that that's not going to be your full-time gig. A, what do you want to be when you grow up? And B, where does KFC fit into that?
Yeah. So that's something that I'm really trying to figure out.
You're studying applied psychology.
I am.
And is it applied psychology and human development?
Yeah.
Is that the full? Yeah.
Yeah.
Applied psychology and human development at the Lynch School of Education.
Yes.
But you don't know what career might look like for yourself.
I know. I just have so many passions.
So what do you know?
Okay. So the plan as of now, my like main career, I want to be a licensed clinical social worker and do independent therapy, like have my own practice.
Yeah.
And down the road, the ultimate goal would be to open a grief support center for children.
Mm.
However, I also want to grow and build and support Kitchens for Change.
Yeah.
And so I'm at a point, especially with my majors right now,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm like, okay, what can I add on to kind of like feed and support that like businesswoman side of me that I feel like isn't being supported now.
Yeah.
With my like sole applied psychology
Mm-hmm.
major.
Yeah. So you want to do that, but also like maintain KFC as like the business side of things and to pursue that with a business mindset?
Not a business mindset, because to me, Kitchens for Change is a ministry.
Hmm.
Wait,
so explain the business thing again?
Well, I'm just saying, like, I don't know what you would describe that as, like, entrepreneurial?
Yeah. Well, if you want to start, I mean, I don't want it to sound it this way. Obviously, the intentions for starting the grief support center or your like work in social work is, there are those intentions, but also like being able to start something new like that, like a center, like there needs to be an entrepreneurial mindset to that.
Yeah.
Like you got to know ins and outs of business. So I guess to that it would be applicable. Does that?
Yeah.
Is that
I'd
right?
say so.
Yeah.
That's just like what I call it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
However you want to label it.
Sure. You that perfectly segues into your experience in life with mental health struggles, and I know how much that means for you to have experienced that, and then to be able to help those who are going through similar or all types of situations. Would you mind just talking about your own experiences? What led you to face certain mental health struggles? How have you overcome certain things? How are you continuing to work to overcome certain things?
Yeah, of course. I think it's something that needs to be talked about more, so I'd love to share with you. So I think where I'd like say my journey with mental health struggles started, it's very rooted in my childhood experiences. Of a huge one, obviously, being the death of my father when I was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so having the trauma associated with that death at such a young age, along with the trauma of being raised by a single mother, just dealing with the aftermath of what childhood grief can look like for a 4-year-old who can barely understand what death is obviously very hard. And I mean, for as long as I can remember, like, grief was something I knew. And even growing up, I think I had more encounters with grief than like the average child. And I think it's mostly due to my mother being older than most mothers. She's 65 years old. She had me when she was 40.
Wait, 65?
46?
46, yeah.
46. She had me when she was 46. And so, like, a lot of her, like, friends, family friends, like, I just remember going to, like, so many funerals growing up. And I think it's also because I have such a big family. Like, my distant relatives would die, and we would, like, go to their funerals. And, like, we're Mexican, so, like, everyone shows up, everyone's invited. And so I just remember going to so many funerals. And so really, like, since I can remember, like, since age 4, like, I knew that death was something that could happen. Like, just like that.
Yeah.
Someone could die, someone could be gone, and your life could be changed forever.
Yeah.
And so dealing with that, like, growing up was really hard for me. I dealt with a lot of separation anxiety from my mom. After experiencing the death of a caregiver, it's a very common thing for a child to think that your other caregiver is going to die. And so that was really my mindset, like, growing up a lot. And so that, I encountered a lot of issues, like, just going to schools, going to, like, sleepovers at friends' houses. Because I had this constant fear that, like, my mom or someone close to me was going to die. And luckily, growing up, actually, like, 2 years after my dad passed away, my mom's very best friend opened up a children's grief support center in my town. And this was the first of its kind in Turlock. There's not many children's grief support centers really across the nation. But this, so she opened it. She opened it 2 years after my dad died, and I was able to be a part of the first grief support group there. And that was a really formative experience for me.
How old were you?
I was 6 when I first entered the program, and I went there for about 4 years. And how the program is structured, it's called Jessica's House. And how it's structured is you're put into support groups that are grouped by type of death.
Okay.
So I was going there on Wednesday afternoons for an hour and a half and sitting alongside other children who were my age who had also experienced the death of a parent. Most of them had actually experienced the death of their dad. And so I was able to see that, like, it's a normal thing. Or not necessarily normal, but that I wasn't the only one experiencing it. And so Jessica's House was an awesome thing for me. It's centered around play therapy and art therapy. And so kids are able to go there and, like, do normal kid things while also expressing their grief. And at that age, it's hard to find words to express what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easier to show others through play and through art and through painting or whatever. And so that's the environment and the opportunity that Jessica's House gives children. And so I was a part of that program for about 4 years. And then I decided it was time for me to go, and that I didn't need to go there every Wednesday. And I think I'm trying to think about my journey with mental health. So yeah, childhood grief, very crucial, defining moment in my life that still impacts me today. And honestly, fast forward to this year, about March of this year, I describe my mental health as stable. I never really struggled with depression. I wouldn't describe myself as struggling with anxiety. Obviously, like, I had always carried the grief of losing my dad with me. But up to March, like, my mental health was never really an issue for me.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that's a privilege to be able to say. But in March of this year, out of nowhere, I started experiencing panic attacks. And they would just, like, come out of nowhere. In the most, like, I would be sitting at dinner and I would start having a panic attack. And I did not know why it was happening. And I started going to therapy for it. And, like, it was clear, like, okay, like, you have panic disorder. But it wasn't really clear to me, like, why now? Why is this happening? And then fast forward to April of last semester, one of my 12-year-old cousins, Elisha, he passed away very suddenly. It was like a week before finals week. And so obviously that really struck my whole family, considering how close we are. And it was a very sudden loss. He didn't have any, like, health issues leading up to it. It was kind of just this freak incident where he got a fever. They took him to the emergency room. They released him. And he ended up having a seizure that night and passing away. And so obviously something like that is very shocking to your whole reality. And I've been experiencing these panic attacks and just this severe anxiety of, like, my physical well-being, not being able to understand why, like, these panic attacks were happening to me all the time.
Yeah.
And so that, combined with the death of my cousin, was a really hard combination. And God is the only thing that really pulled me through, like, the end of that semester and having to go home for a week, come back, finish my finals. That was a really hard time for me. But really this summer was characterized by a heightened experience of those panic attacks, combined with even more anxiety around my health and, thinking that I was going to die, and these very intrusive thoughts that I couldn't control, to the point where, like, I would get a headache, convince myself I had a brain tumor, and tell my mom that I needed to go to the doctor. Or I would be thinking about how, like, oh, like, I'm driving right now. It would be horrible if I got a panic attack. And then I would start convincing myself that I was experiencing panic attack symptoms. And then it would manifest itself into an actual panic attack. And I would have to pull over and get someone to come be with me so that I was safe.
Yeah.
And so, this continued throughout the summer, and I was doing extensive therapy, really trying to understand, like, what was going on. And towards the end of the summer, I was able to get diagnosis of delayed onset PTSD, specifically from the death of my father. And from the outside, while getting that label can seem kind of, like, scary, it was actually really freeing for me, because I had something that explained exactly what I was experiencing and why. And so it all made sense that like I had this stored trauma that I had been holding within me my whole life.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really dealt with the loss of my father as much as I thought I had. And so when my cousin passed away, and really like when I went away to college and was away from like my support systems, the safety of like my home, the PTSD started creeping in on me and kind of like almost screaming at me that I needed to deal with that trauma that I had held within and like suppressed for so long.
Yeah.
And when my cousin passed away, it was this trigger for all of that. And it kind of started flooding out. And that's why I started getting panic attacks and health anxiety and all those things.
Yeah.
And so experiencing this summer was obviously very overwhelming, knowing that I was going to have to come back to BC.
Yeah.
Especially after ending on such like a hard note with the death of my cousin. And for a while, I didn't know if being here this semester was something that I was going to be able to accomplish. If it was going to be too triggering of an environment to me where like I wouldn't be able to function. And I kind of just gave it to God and I was like, I'm going to try and I'm going to see how it is. And miraculously, being here has been really good for me. And my PTSD symptoms have not been bad at all, and they've been very manageable, and I'm learning how to cope with them every day. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to say that. And I'm grateful and just like learning to be present and to be in this moment, because PTSD is something that I'll have to deal with for the rest of my life. And it's something where you peel off layers with the different experiences, different times in your life that you're at. This summer, I peeled off a layer, and I don't know when I'm going to have to peel off another layer and when those panic attacks, those triggers will come back. But I've really come to peace with living for today. And that's something that is very freeing for me, and that I'm really grateful for, despite the hardship of all of this. And it's obviously grown in me this passion for becoming a therapist and for being that person and that support and that professional that can give you the answers when people are experiencing the overwhelming nature of mental disorders. And so being a therapist really has a lot of underlying passion for me, and it's very rooted in like my life experiences. So that's a very long answer to your question.
Thank you for your very long answer. Thank you for sharing. I think it is what you said at the beginning about it being so important to talk about all that. And so I super appreciate your openness and vulnerability to go through all that. I can't even imagine how, how difficult all that is. But speaking of faith, you keep sprinkling God and faith in all you're saying. It's kind of also a big question. But I'd asked you before about like not hearing like a one set, kind of like a personal testimony from you. I mean, basically you have shared your testimony up until this point. So my question now is, how does God and faith kind of tie all that together? I'm talking family, talking being here, talking mental health, talking about what your plans are for the future. Like, it seems that God is working in and through all of that. So could you elaborate on that?
For sure. I am privileged to say that I have never not known God. And that's because of my amazingly devout mother who has been through hell and back. Just like a short recap, she immigrated here from Mexico when she was 6 years old, raised her siblings while her single mother provided for them. just went through so much in her life, lost the love of her life, had to raise me on her own and my other siblings. And so she's been through a lot in her life.
Yeah.
And from day one, she taught me that, like, God is the only answer, the sole force that we are to rely upon, the one and only faithful thing that will pull us through anything. And, you know, like, I remember as a child getting kind of annoyed with her because I'd be like, oh, Mom, like, literally things like, oh, like, I can't find, like, my Hannah Montana guitar. Like, I don't know where I put it. And she would be like, pray about it. And I'd be like, Mom, like, can't you just help me find it? Or like, Mom, like, gosh, like, Camila's being so mean to me today. Pray about it, Audrey. That was the answer every single time, without a doubt. And I honestly held a lot of resentment towards her for a while until, like, I got older and I was like, wow, I'm glad she did that for me. But she could literally be a nun. Like, when I tell you, this woman, like, wakes up every morning, first thing she does, she goes, reads her Bible, prays, listens to worship music. Like, everything about my mom, like, breathes God. Like, God just flows out of her. Like, in every single conversation, without a doubt, God is mentioned, even if it's not faith related, because that's just, like, that's the reality for her. Like, she literally tells me that, like, God is, like, her husband. Like, Mom, are you ever gonna, like, marry again? She's like, no, like, it's me and God. Like, I'm content. And so having, like, that example really, like, set the stage for how I have lived my life, because, like, especially growing up, like, I was very focused on, like, being a good child so that my single mother, like, who was already caring so much, like, didn't have to, like, deal with me. And so, like, if this was, like, the stage that my mom set, like, I was going to follow it.
Yeah.
And that was very much, like, the perspective I had on it for a while, until it got to, like, me facing my own hardship.
Yeah.
Where I really had to, like, learn that, okay, like, this is true. Like, God is our relying force. And I think, like, one defining moment for that was the summer before 7th grade year. I had scoliosis surgery. I had really bad, like, I had a 52-degree curvature in my spine. So it was crazy. It was really bad, really intense. And, like, up until literally, like, that year, I didn't know I had scoliosis. Like, I didn't know it was an issue.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden my mom was like, hey, like, your uncle who's a doctor says that your shoulders look like a little, they shouldn't be looking like that. We need to, like, get an x-ray and get you checked out. And in March, I went to the doctor. They were like, hey, your scoliosis is really bad. In May, I had this, like, really intensive spinal fusion surgery, which I don't know if you know much about it, but, like, they cut your back open, they take out 2 of your ribs, they, like, literally restructure, like, your vertebrae, put metal rods alongside it. Like, it's a really intense surgery.
Yeah.
And, like, I was a child, I grew up, like, any sickness I had, my mom didn't take me to the doctor. She's like, you're fine. Like, here's some medicine. Like, I didn't even, like, I hadn't broken a bone or anything. And so, like, it was this really, like, sudden, like, trauma that changed my life for, like, a whole year, because I couldn't run. I couldn't lift anything over 5 pounds for a year.
Yeah.
And it, like, just changed my life drastically.
Yeah.
And so I think that was, like, one of the first moments where I really had to turn my eyes to God, when, like, everything else was so hopeless.
Yeah.
And I continued, like, having those moments, obviously, through adolescence, especially during the pandemic, where my attitude shifted from like, this is something that like I've been raised to believe, to this is something I believe wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think I'd say the biggest turning point of my faith was during the pandemic, when it was just me and my mom home alone, like for months, really.
Yeah.
And my mom is someone who like always says like, you can't be lonely when you have God. And so that's like the perspective I had in the pandemic. It was the first time where I opened scripture and really began diving into it. It was the first time where I started unraveling some of like that childhood trauma I had through journaling and through prayer. And my personal relationship with God really like skyrocketed during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I'd say like since then, God has been a priority for me. And I think coming to BC marked like a dramatic shift in that, since it was like more of an individual choice of like, okay, here you are, you're on the opposite side of the nation by yourself. And I came into college with an intention of like staying true to my faith. I knew that there were going to be people at BC whose faith wasn't necessarily something important to them, which is fine. But I knew that like I wanted to live a lifestyle in college that reflected the teachings of Jesus and that reflected my devotion to him.
Yeah.
And so like week one, I was committed to ensuring that that remained my priority. And so like I went to church. Like at that point, I hadn't really met any other believers. And so I went by myself to church. And I remember like sitting in church, like crying, being like, God, like, I know you're with me. And I just pray that like you provide community for me and people here that love you and that want to follow you and that are devoted to you.
Yeah.
And he answered my prayers. And, you know, Chi Alpha was a huge pillar for me at BC in terms of like holding true to what I believed in a college where not everyone decides to prioritize faith. And so, yeah, I think coming to BC was a huge defining moment. And then obviously everything I went through this summer with the death of my cousin and my mental health struggles, that marked a significant surrender for me to God.
Yeah.
In the way that before, as I kind of spoke on before, I had this constant fear of death. And when my cousin died and death became more real than it ever had before, since I was old enough to really understand it.
Yeah.
And I was witnessing what it did to my aunt and uncle who lost their only child. And, you know, the impact it had on my whole family, really. There was like this very specific moment at Elisha's burial where my aunt spoke at the microphone and all of us were just in tears, like just completely distraught, like holding on to one another, like bawling our eyes out. And she stood at the microphone and she told all of us, I want to make it very clear to all of you guys that this does not mean, like me losing my only son does not mean that I am turning my back on God. This does not mean that I am angry at him. This does not mean that I'm losing my faith, God is our fortress. I don't know why this happened, but I will continue following him. I will continue worshiping him. And I want all of you guys to do the same. And so that really set the precedent for me, my whole family, continuing to trust in God in the midst of our grief. And in doing that, God has been so faithful. Obviously, Elisha isn't here with us, and I wish I could change that. But I mean, so many blessings have grown out of this loss. We've started a nonprofit in his name, and family members have reconciled with God in ways that they didn't before.
Mm-hmm.
And people are hearing about Elisha's life and how much he loved Jesus and being inspired by it. And just like these beautiful things have happened. And we're learning how to survive every day without Elisha. And I think this summer represented like a turning point where I was so consumed within myself on like, oh my gosh, like with my PTSD, like, oh my gosh, am I okay? Like, what are these symptoms I'm experiencing? Am I going to die? I need to go to the doctor. Am I going to die? And like in childhood, like, oh my gosh, like, is my mom going to die? Is someone I know going to die? Like, what if that happens? And like Elisha dying, that's when it did happen. And so this summer, I witnessed the aftermath of that. And obviously the heartbreak and the struggle and the anger and all of the defining, factors of grief. But alongside that, I experienced the faithfulness of God that transcended all of that, that pulled us through that and continues to pull us through it every day. And for the first time, I surrendered life to God in the sense that I realized that no matter life or death, like, God's got us, especially since after death comes heaven. And so why am I living in fear when he is greater than all of that? So that's the point I'm at now with my faith, where I have surrendered to God more than I ever have. And my family and I have lived through so much to the point where it's foolish of me to put anything on a pedestal other than God and my faith. And I am so open and honest about that more than I ever have before, about just like talking about how important that is to me. So I'd say that is my testimony and my life's journey with God.
What does it mean to surrender to God?
To surrender to God means putting any expectation or earthly desire or want for control over your life in God's hands, and making that decision every single day. That's what it means to me.
I like that. Thanks for sharing all that. That's really inspiring. And thank God for your mom.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Thank God for Gloria.
Yeah, she's awesome. Awesome.
Is.
Incredible.
She is.
Yeah. what are you looking forward to the rest of the semester?
I'm looking forward to continuing to live in the moment, which I know is such a cliche term, but like as I've described, it's very important to me. And I think I am appreciating Boston and BC more than I have ever before. And I think a lot of things have to do with that.
Yeah.
One of them being the fact that I just got out of a long-term relationship. And so, like, I'm at...
Wait, I didn't want to, like... Well, now we got to talk about it. Okay.
Okay.
Well, keep going.
Do you want me to talk about my long-term
Okay, I'll ask the
relationship?
question. The question I'd prepared, which I was going to ask, but now I have to ask, is... what was the question? Just what is your attitude on, like, relationships now?
Yeah.
Coming out of that long-term relationship and, just kind of where you are at now.
Mm-hmm. So, I ended my relationship with my boyfriend of, I don't know how long it was, like 2 years and 8 months, I think. The first week of college. I was the one that ended things.
First week of college this semester.
This semester. And yeah, it was a healthy relationship. I learned a lot, but we kind of just grew apart. We started dating when we were 16 years old, and I think we're very different people now. And I wish the best for him. He treated me well, but I kind of just realized that we wanted different things and we were very different people, and that I didn't see a future with him. And so since ending that relationship, obviously my life has been drastically different. And it's been hard, going through a breakup is really hard. But I know that it was 100% the right decision, and I'm very glad I made it. And I feel so much freer. Like, I feel like I have so much more, like, mental space to, like, enjoy life, especially because we were long distance. Like, that really contributed to me not appreciating, like, being here at BC as much as I should have. And now that I'm out of that, it's the most freeing feeling.
Yeah.
To be so centered here and to not, like, have a part of me, like, missing or being drawn back home. And so, yeah, I think I'm at a point now where, like, I'm very much in a healing stage, and I don't plan on getting into a relationship for a while. I'm not going to put a time cap on it, but I know for sure I'm not ready now, and probably won't be for a few more months. But I learned a lot in that relationship.
Sorry, you just said you don't want to put a time cap on it, and then you said a few more months. Sorry.
Okay, well, I don't want to say, like, a year, because who knows, like, what God can do.
Yeah.
Like, God's healing me right now.
And
it's all on his timing.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot in my relationship, obviously. We were together for a really long time. I learned a lot about what I want, what I don't want. I'm still learning that. And yeah, I don't know. I think, what was the question about?
Just, like, what is your kind of, like, newfound attitude on...
My newfound attitude.
On romantic relationships, on how you're going to approach that.
Yeah.
I think you covered that.
I think, like, the biggest thing is ensuring that I find someone that's equally yoked in their faith. I think that was one of the biggest issues.
What does it mean to be equally yoked in faith?
I think, like, equally pursuing God.
Yeah.
Actively and consistently. Like, obviously that's not something I do. It's something I'm growing to do and, like, strive to do every day. And I want, like, we're not perfect in that, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We're human. But I want someone to meet me where I'm at in my faith journey and to match like the fire I have for Jesus.
Yeah.
And to be, like that spiritual partner. And, there's a million things I've realized that I like want in a man.
Yeah.
But that's definitely at the top of my list.
There you go. As it should be.
Yeah.
As Boston College Chi Alpha campus pastor Nick Huber says, I want a partner who will put my faith to shame. And
wow.
I
That's
told
a
this
good
to
way
you.
to put it. You
Yeah.
haven't.
I told it to you and you said you really liked it.
Okay, well, I don't remember.
Well, now
I'm
you
sorry.
remember now. And I'll put in my 2 cents that out of a longing for Jesus and a true desire to pursue him and to know him, like out of that comes like it's inevitable that who you're attracted to romantically also shares that same passion and desire, because both of you guys are putting Jesus at the core of the relationship and at the core of your hearts. So you're like, it's just like, yeah, if the more I'd say like, and this goes back to like just seeking God first. And I think just specifically with romantic relationships, like the more I seek Jesus, the more I desire him, the more I will be attracted to and drawn to someone who is equally yoked, and that God will bless me with that partnership where I can kind of meet someone where they're at in their faith and just be so drawn to that. And then from there, like continue to just like exalt Jesus together.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Thank you.
Wow. I'll remember that this time.
Anything else that you were looking forward to these days?
I have become so much closer with my friends like since the breakup. And I'm so grateful for that. Like I live in Walsh in an 8-man. And so constantly surrounded by my friends. I love all my roommates so much. We have so much fun. And I'm a really social person, so like I just love being surrounded by people all the time. And so I really look forward to all the memories this semester with them. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just like loving all the BC things, hockey games, football. Arupe, I'm going on Arupe in January. Arupe is like a faith-based program here at BC where we go on international encounters. I'm going to the U.S.-Mexico border in January. Our trip is focused on migration, and so we're going to learn about the forced migration crisis from community partners who are serving migrants every day. And so I look forward to that. It's definitely going to be a really hard experience.
Yeah.
But I know that it's going to be very transformative.
Awesome.
So I look forward to that. Mm-hmm. And everything else that God has in store for me that I don't know about yet.
Amen to that. Sweet. At the end of every episode, I like to pray for my guest.
That's beautiful.
May I pray for you, Audrey?
Of course.
Right here, right now. Awesome. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I'm so grateful for this conversation, this time with Audrey. God, thank you so much for, just thank you so much for Audrey in my life and the way that just she has shared her story with me now, and that as much as I knew before, that I'm so just know now so much more about her, and just I just can't help but feel that through her life and through her story that God, your radiance and your glory shines through her life and her story. God, that through all that she and her family has gone through and how she's grown up and where she is now at her faith in her life, and just the way you have brought her here to BC, God, that I'm just so moved and touched and inspired and encouraged by the way that you are working in and through her life. God, so I just pray that you would continue to lift Audrey up as she continues to discover what it means to surrender to you, what it means to be able to just use and share her own life experiences to help others, to serve others, God, that what she is doing, God, is so about ministry and serving others out of the love of her heart. God, may you continue to fill her cup. May you continue to, you know, may you continue to bring in her that love. And I pray that she would continue to be able to discern just how to use all these gifts and talents, abilities to best serve you. And yeah, there's just so much she can draw from her own life as she moves forward and thinks about just helping others and leading a life of faith and really, continuing on the work that, those like her mother have taught her about just humbly serving others in reverence of you and just to be a priest in your kingdom, God. So just lift Audrey up. I also pray for her mental health, and I pray that, God, you are right next to her. You are holding her in every single day. May she be so supported by that fact and by you, and know your presence and know that you are with her every single day. God, that she would continue to seek you more, and that would make it all the more merrier for you to seek her and for them to just be mutual in their relationship. And God, I just pray that, she would just know with such firm conviction that you are just with her and love her so, so much, and have your arms wide open for her to just comfort and heal her every single day. I pray for all her family and friends. God, may you bless them. For those in her life who don't know you, God, may she continue to be able to minister and continue to be able to just so openly just share your love and be so unapologetic about who you are and how you have moved in her life, and others would be really inspired by that and moved by that as I am, and be willing to see a glimpse of who you are through Audrey. God, I just can't thank you enough for Audrey and this time. God, we give it all up to you, God. We love you. We thank you so much. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. That was a beautiful prayer.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
This was awesome.
You are this wasn't even a conversation. It was more of like an interview.
That's what it usually becomes. Yeah, I said that. Yeah.
And you should consider a field in therapy. I think you would be a great therapist.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was episode 14 of SehoPod. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Audrey Smallwood, for joining us again.
Thank you so much
Any
for
last
having
remarks?
me.
Any last things to say?
I don't know.
Great.
Keep watching. Like and subscribe.
Comment share.
Down below. Share.
Mm-hmm.
Continue supporting Seho and all the amazing things he does.
Thank you very much. We'll see you guys next time for episode 15.
Bye, guys.